Alright, now we're going to review chapter 23, section 1 and 2. The last video that I posted on YouTube was talking about the causes of World War I. This is kind of a continuation of that. So the first thing we need to kind of review is, remember we have the Schieffelin Plan. If you remember, Germany is located in the central part of Europe, and to the east they have Russia, to the west they have France. So one of the things that Germany did not want to do is they did not want to fight a two-front war. So what that entailed is it would entail them basically splitting their military into two fronts. So they came up with what they call the Schieffelin Plan. Schieffelin Plan would be that Germany would attack fast going through neutral Belgium along the coast and defeat France quickly, and then take on Russia in the east. They did not want to fight a war on two fronts. All right? And this goes back to the chain of events with the alliances. England declares war on Germany, Italy sides with the Allies, and basically we have World War I. All right? Now, a couple of things that you need to understand. All right? One of the things that the Germans were doing, and this is a big factor in getting the United States involved in World War I, Germany believed in what they called unrestricted submarine warfare. All right? They were sinking U.S. ships, Allied ships. They were trying to get supplies from the United States to the war effort in Europe. And two things happen that finally get us involved. We are trying to stay out of this. So one is what we call the Zimmermann Note. And if you remember, the Zimmermann Note was a note that was intercepted by the U.S. that was sent from Germany to Mexico. And the idea was that Germany would support Mexico in a future war against the United States to regain territory if Mexico supported Germany in World War I. So this is a direct threat onto U.S. lives and U.S. territory. The second thing that happened was the Lusitania. The Lusitania was a British ocean liner that was sailing in the Atlantic Ocean on May 7th, 1915, and it was sunk by a German U-boat. Now, here's the issue. 1,200 people died, including 128 Americans. The Germans contend there's ammunition on board. We deny that. The Allies deny that. But ultimately, there was ammunition on the ship. And it was a situation where we often tried to use passenger ships as a way to try to get the Germans not to bomb or torpedo a ship. All right? But now, the United States, the public support is for the war. All right, what happens is, here's an example of a German U-boat inside of a German U-boat. All right, now, World War I is all about trench warfare. All right, so trench warfare is this idea where both sides kind of dug out these trenches. All right, and then you would storm at each other. Okay, they were very bloody. You fought for months over very, very, very little amounts of land. And again, if you want to see the trench warfare in action, you can watch the All Quiet on the Western Front clip that will give you a sense of what trench warfare was kind of like. Here are a couple pictures of trenches in World War I. You notice that the trench systems had a series of trenches. Okay? And then you had the area that was kind of in between. So here would kind of be the Allied trench. You have over here no man's land, and then the other side's trench, the Central Powers trench, would be over here. And you literally would fight for months over this small amount of land. Okay? Trench conditions. Trenches were, infected by rats and disease. Dead bodies littered the ground. Food was scarce. Sleep was almost impossible due to constant artillery blasts. The men slept in mud, washed in mud, ate mud, and dreamed mud. So this was a situation you see here. These are obviously American troops. They got the long socks that kind of go up, boots that go up to their knees. You can also tell by the helmets and things like that. All right? Some more pictures of trench warfare, which you can obviously look up on the web page for the PowerPoints. Some more aerial photo and other photos of trench warfare. All right? No man's land, if you remember, no man's land is the land that is in between the two trenches. Neither the Allies or the Central Powers control that land. Alright? Now, the other issue you got to understand is we have some new weapons that pop up in World War I, large scale for the first time. We have machine guns, we have tanks, we got poison gas, and we got large artillery. Alright? And we also have submarines. And we understand that machine guns created huge amounts of casualties. Tanks were first established by Great Britain, but both sides have them, and we'll kind of go in more depth on these in a little bit here. Alright? Airplanes were used in World War I. Alright, so here's an example of a World War I machine gun. This took 2 guys to operate. It was also, you see here, was water cooled because the barrel would get hot and stuff like that. Here's another example of a Allied machine gun in World War I. You see again, it's a 2-man operation. Alright, flamethrowers developed in World War I. Here's an example of artillery. Now we had cannons dating way back in history. Basically, an artillery gun is basically a huge cannon that would, blast just huge artillery shells that would create huge amounts of damage. So here's an example of the same building prior to the war and after the war. And you can see that how destroyed it is. And you can imagine what the countryside looked like if your farm was part of a trench system where all these artillery blasts and things like that. Alright? Alright, airplanes. You look up here, airplanes are very different in World War I than what we think of today with F-16 fighter planes and stealth bombers and things like that. Airplanes were used on both sides for everything from dropping bombs to aerial combat. We use them for surveillance as well. This is an example of a Zeppelin. And again, if you want to review the Flyboy Zeppelin clip, that is linked on my website as well. Here's an example of a World War I tank. This is a British tank. Early tanks were immobile, broke down a lot, were slow. They were used a great deal for getting through barbed wire, running telegraph lines. They're nothing like the 65-mile-per-hour tanks that we have today. And here are an example of another British tank, and here is a German tank from World War I. One of the most feared weapons of World War I was poison gas. And now we're going to talk a little bit about poison gas use during World War I. This is a German gas mask from World War I. You can tell from the helmet and the style of gas mask. There are a couple different types of poison gas. The first type of poison gas is what we call a tearing agent. If you remember, tear gas was first used by the French in 1914. Causes temporary blindness. Gas masks offered pretty good protection, and it was used kind of as a way to disable somebody rather than long-term affect them. This is very similar to pepper spray and mace. U.S. Policemen and SWAT teams use this against criminals and things like that. All right. The next kind. This is a clip of the U.S. Army Basic Training gas chamber. You can look at that if you want to, but that will not be on the test. The next kind of poison gas is what they call an efficient, which is a poison gas that would basically make you suffocate. The first one was called chlorine gas, which was developed by Germany. Long-term exposure could cause death, and gas masks were effective in filtering chlorine. It was still one that we could prevent. The problem is, this didn't always go as planned. Here's a clip or a quote of a German or a British where they actually, used poison gas, but actually drifted back on their own then. Phosgene was another form of poison gas. This was developed by the French. 85% of all deaths in World War I that were caused by gas were by phosgene. The last and most probably feared poison gas in World War I is what they call mustard gas, which is a blistering agent. Basically, it attacks any moist, exposed skin, your eyes, lungs, armpits, groin, etc. Cause huge blisters and things like that. It's a very painful way to go. And if you look at, how was it dispensed, there were many different ways that they dispensed poison gas, all right? So here you got artillery shells that would be put in big machines, artillery guns. They also dispensed it by basically using wind, all right? And where they would put it on one side of the trench, and wind would then carry the poison gas, hopefully towards the other trench. And again, you were literally separated by, maybe 500-600 yards. So if the wind would change direction, it would actually drift back towards your trench. All right. These are large canisters again, where they would just let the wind take it. All right. This is German with more poison gas than artillery. All right. If you remember, before gas masks, soldiers used socks soaked in urine to filter out poison gas. The ammonia that was in urine would actually somewhat help. These are more examples of equipment which you guys will not be on the test. All right, so you don't have to worry about that. And here's some pictures of gas victims. Obviously, this is poison gas, blistering agent. And obviously, here are the gas casualties. Make sure you remember the difference between a casualty and a death. A death is you are dead. A casualty is you can no longer fight.